Good afternoon. I'd like to call the December 12th, 2023 School Board Work Session to order. First, we have an update on the school day length and time presentation from the November work session from Drs. Wozniak and High.
Good afternoon, Ms. Coker, Ms. Haynes, school board members, Dr. Daugherty. This afternoon, we are here to provide an update on the school day length and our schedule with a focus on middle schools. Dr. Wozniak will come up and provide you that update.
Madam Chair, school board members, Dr. Daugherty, thank you for this opportunity to update you regarding the middle school schedule. So currently across all of our schools at every level, we have a 6.5-hour day in a 178-day calendar. And once you take out the flex and take out lunch and take out some recess, we have about 1,050 instructional hours, which well covers the 990 requirement that's overall. But where we need to focus is we need to focus at the middle school itself, and we need to focus at the credit-bearing courses that are within the middle school schedule. So since the November school board work session, we wanted to be sure that the board was aware that staff have started to focus on looking at the use of time as it pertains to the middle school schedule. This is our area of focus. So the focus, once again, is extending time within the middle school schedule. And there is a 140-hour seat time requirement for courses that earn a high school credit-bearing course. So courses such as all of our world languages, algebra, geometry, algebra 2, earth science, these are the courses that we are short on meeting the 140 requirement. And so the task that is set before us is how to extend the instructional hours, specifically for those courses, without extending the school day and remaining within the confines of the school start time and the existing school exit time. And so at the November 16th middle school principals meeting, the principals were tasked with exploring options within the existing school day length to add time to specific course sections without reducing course opportunities. As of now, we have developed a planning process, and early in the new year, we will be putting together our research group to explore options to propose a consistent Chesterfield Middle School bell schedule for next school year. Again, I want to emphasize that's for the 24-25 school year that adds time to specific courses without lengthening the school day. Does the board have any questions?
Thank you very much, Dr. Wozniak. Board members, is there any discussion? Ms. Haynes?
At the last meeting, I think we made a number of comments and were open to exploring multiple options, not just keeping within the bell schedule. So I was curious if it's possible to add the time needed, because I guess I kind of thought we might have like option A, B, or C. Will this option do what the many teachers that reached out to us who are concerned about meeting the instructional criteria? Will this plan, do you think we can accomplish that within the existing day, or do we need to also look at just at the middle school level? Because I think that's where the problem is. Adding, I don't know, 5 minutes or 10 minutes, or, I'm just curious if you can tell me more, because I think I heard from all of us that we wanted to really understand kind of the problem and the various solutions.
Our initial first swing at this is going to be specifically at the middle school level within the school day, but presenting to the board several different options that are contained within the existing school day.
I guess I would encourage you, because, I realize it's not our board, because this is our last meeting, but because it seemed like there was a strong desire to include other options. So for example, if staying within the day is not feasible, then I would say don't hesitate to reach out to the next board and say, listen, we tried to do this within one day, but we can't, and we need an extra 5 minutes, or whatever it is. I would just encourage you not to limit yourself, but to kind of put all options and then let the next board to decide. So they have an array of options to choose from if there's more than one solution. And staying within the day might not be the ideal solution. So I would say don't limit your options and let the next board make that decision.
Certainly.
I had excuse me.
Go ahead, Ms. Safran.
When would the board be expecting, or would it be a reasonable timeline to expect a proposed bell schedule? So you're meeting January, February. Would it March, April be?
February.
So in February.
Yes,
Great. Wonderful. Thanks.
absolutely.
That was my question, too. Okay. Correct. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have an update from the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee. Mr. Walker.
Good afternoon. It's nice to see all of you again. Thank you for having me back to present. I think all of you have heard this presentation before, but I'm going to go through it again for the benefit of the oncoming new board members that are coming on in January, and also just give you a quick update on a few things. Just a quick reminder, again, my name is Justin Walker. I came to ESAC by way of basically asking too many questions. Stumbled my way into being the chair of the board by the same route, and so here I am. I've been in the high-performance building space for most of my career. That essentially means helping facilities operate better, both for their occupants and for their owners, and that's both environmental aspects and financial stewardship aspects. So that's kind of how I got involved with the board. For those of you who may not know, the board was created in 2020 to make recommendations for best practices to enhance school operations and environmental sustainability, as well as educating our students in our community. Items in our purview include environmental quality, energy and water conservation, food sourcing, waste reduction, facility operations, and occupant health. I would like to take just a quick moment to thank Ms. Haynes and Ms. Coker for their leadership in creating and sustaining this committee. They had the vision to see that Chesterfield County can become a regional leader in both environmental and financial stewardship, and I really appreciate the support that both of you have given to the committee. Over the last 3 years, ESAC has presented recommendations that were in line with stated school board policies, such as high quality and efficient facilities, waste reduction, preventive maintenance, and use of local food. Along those lines, these are our recommendations for this year and for this budget season. I'll kind of walk through these. Again, you may have heard a lot of this, but if you have questions, please stop me right in the middle. I don't mind at all. Happy to discuss any of these in depth. For the last 2 years, ESAC has made recommendations to the board to begin the creation of an environmental literacy program, as well as create a waste reduction program in the schools, including standardized guidelines for recycling at each site and the means to sustain these programs. And what that means is our survey of personnel indicate that student and faculty involvement will be the key to maximizing a waste reduction and recycling program. And ESAC would like to propose that a faculty member for each CCPS site be identified for a new position of environmental champion, which will oversee both the waste reduction and environmental literacy efforts at each site. With the ever-increasing workload on school employees, we think it wouldn't be reasonable or consistent to ask them to volunteer for that position, so we would like to ask the board to create a stipend for each of the staff members who are willing to serve as that environmental champion at each site. Additionally, ESAC supports the expansion of the waste reduction program that in the following areas, consumption is the major one. I'm sorry, composting is the major one. A former ESAC member by the name of Martin Gonzalez owns a restaurant here in Chesterfield County. He also operates a farm that supplies his restaurant also here in Chesterfield County. Martin and other farmers like him have shown interest in repurposing our food waste to use at their farms. And ESAC has already begun a partnership pilot with the Food and Nutrition Services at the district to look into the feasibility of collecting that waste. There are some roadblocks to that, both physical and financial, so we would just ask the board to continue to support us as we develop that initiative. When it's ready, we'd like to ask the board to support that and help us spread it through to other schools across the county. This program also offers opportunities for our community to partner with the schools and business owners to have beneficial use of that food waste that's currently just going to the landfill. Reusable cafeteria items is something that we've talked about in the past as well. There are also roadblocks to finding ways to implement reusable food trays and utensils and so forth at each site. And we would like to ask the board also to continue to support us in expanding that reusable lunch items as much as possible. In regards to environmental literacy, I'm sorry, I jumped one ahead. There we go. Okay, in regards to environmental literacy, the ESAC has asked the board to create the environmental literacy curriculum and have that administered at each site by the environmental champion. As part of the curriculum, we would like to take advantage of all the information that's available through our new smart metering program. And for those of you who aren't very aware of that program, John Thuma under Josh Davis has created a program where they're implementing smart utility meters at many of our sites. As a matter of fact, maybe most of our sites at this point across the county. The real benefit to that is we get real-time utility data information. And that helps us optimize operations at our school, which actually can come with some financial savings as well. But a side benefit to that is we now have access to metering data at every site across the county. And ESAC feels that information can be used in the environmental curriculum program to help our students see real-life examples of real things that are happening right there in their own schools. Not only does it give them real-life examples, but it also helps them understand the financials of and the logistics of operating a school in the community that they're going to become citizens of. And in addition to that, we can use that information to help quantify the carbon impacts of the things that we do during the school day. So moving on to our efficiency aspects, there are a handful of things that we would like to talk about. I'll be kind of brief on these, but again, please jump in and ask for any additional details. ESAC recommends incorporating requirements for engineering and construction, especially as we're dawning on this era of needing to build a lot more. We would like to see our contractors that we work with be required to demonstrate innovation for energy use and waste reduction in their proposals that they give us for construction. We'd like that to be a requirement that they are graded on. Second, as you know, CCPS has been looking into renewables. We've made some decent progress on that over the last couple of years under Scott and on Josh's team. And we would like to see the district continue to advance that. The Inflation Reduction Act is providing 30 to 50% credit for arrays that are built for any type of owner now, not just for-profit entities, but even private entities. Even public entities such as Chesterfield County can get direct tax incentives, checks, money in the mail from the federal government to pay for those, offset the cost of those arrays. This is one of those things that because of the incredible advances in PV technology and the incredible increases in utility rates that we've seen over the last few years and probably will continue to see, this is not just an environmental measure, but this is a financial stewardship measure as well. Finally, and this is something that would take us into the realm of being a regional leader, we would like CCPS to ask, when we build a new school, how much effort, how much carbon is it going to take to build that school? And evaluate our options based on that, partially based on that criteria as well. That's not something that very many people are doing. This is something that we would be on the leading edge of if we required our engineers, our architects to provide an estimate of the carbon impact of the construction of a facility, not just the long-term operation. So that's an area that we could definitely be a leader in. Also want to take a quick moment to commend the board and Mr. Davis's team and John Thuma in particular on the expansion of, or the forays that we made into upgrading the HVAC control system across the county. It's a big project, right? There's a lot of nuance, a lot of logistics, a lot of money involved in that kind of a project, but the existing platform is aging to the point where it just will not be sustainable. That brings with it a whole host of problems, such as the lack of ability to control a space, an extensive loss of energy that comes from the lack of control, and then of course, all of the comfort issues that go along with both of those things. So that program has begun. There's a long road ahead, but we want to thank the board for supporting that so far, and we'll continue to support in any way that we can to continue that measure. Oh, sorry. So there's the slide that goes along with everything I just said. All right. For me personally, this is my big focus. As I mentioned, I've been in the energy analysis business for a little over 20 years. The company I work for right now is based in Seattle, Washington, but my customers are all throughout the Southeast. And, frankly, for a lot of those customers, they're not motivated by or even believe in the concept of a carbon footprint. Some of them, if I say the phrase carbon footprint, they say, thank you, have a nice day, and I'm out the door. But they all understand money. And an LED lighting conversion would directly support both our environmental goals and our financial stewardship goals that we have. We feel like, based on our estimates, and we've actually spent some time this year working with Clay Bowles at the county to kind of refine some of these numbers that we presented last year. And more or less, he agreed with what we came up with. We have somewhere between $800,000 and $1.1 million in annual lighting savings at today's utility rates, annual cost savings at today's utility rates with a district-wide LED upgrade. Because our county is an interesting blend of both fiscally driven folks and environmentally minded folks, it's worth noting that an LED project would reduce our carbon footprint by 6,000-ish tons per year, which is between 10 and 15% of our total environmental impact of operations, while saving county funds. Doing the project in a single fell swoop would put us in a position to have a professional design and product selection, so that we're doing it intentionally and not just doing it as things fail and in sort of an emergency state or as we can get to it state, but very deliberate. And it would also solve sort of the equity question of which facilities are we doing first, right? If we do them all together in one project, which again, something I've seen many times at a lot of districts very similar to ours. These are very successful projects. They're fairly painless to implement. It's simply a matter of saying, yes, we're going to commit to spending this $5 million now and get a return of about 5 to 6 years on a product that lasts 30. So the math kind of does itself. We get roughly 4 times the money back in our budget over the next 30 years that we spend in doing this project up front. So last recommendation, we've heard this one before too, the trailers. ESAC endorses fully the district's desire to move away from portable trailers as educational space, primarily because they are the least efficient energy-wise types of spaces that we can operate. And I can ramble on about that for quite a while, but I think we probably all agree on that, so I'll hold short there. I do want to take a quick moment to mention a few things that we're going to try to address in the next year. Community involvement is probably the biggest thing. We understand that everything I've talked about here is they're probably all things we can all agree on, right? It's a matter of how do we find how do these fit in the priorities of all of the other things that we have to talk about. And something that ESAC would like to do is to bring more community support for these initiatives, both directly with the school board and with the county, so that we can help them understand the necessity to do these initiatives and hopefully find a way to get those things worked into the budget. We just ask that the board continue to recommend and ask the county from your side. We'll do the same from our side and try to expand out into the community, bring more support for that. District-wide building automation upgrade. As I mentioned before, Mr. Davis's team has done the first couple of steps in that. There are a lot of steps left, and we're going to continue to help research and support that. Bus fleet efficiency is a big thing that we'd like to look at this year. And in speaking with staff, we understand that our current fleet is 30 years old or something like that, or a portion of it is approaching 30 years old. A lot of opportunity to reduce both fuel cost and carbon impact with bus upgrades. Technology integrated curriculum is something that I touched on a little bit. We have some more exciting ideas there that we'd like to explore in the new year and present to you all as we move forward. Key takeaway, again, there's several things on here, but funding the LED lighting conversion is probably the biggest thing, and that's why it's at the top of the list. And then we'd like to continue to pursue solar and the others after that. I did include an appendix, or at least I think I intended to. I may actually need to submit that after the fact, but we have some data that helps support, in particular, the PV request and the LED upgrade. And again, we've talked that over with Mr. Bowles of the county, and he kind of sees it the same way we do. So any further information or data about that, we're happy to share. All right, that was like 9 minutes straight. You have any questions?
That was great. Thank you very much, Mr.
Certainly.
Walker. Board members, any discussion? Ms. Haynes?
I think I saw an ESAC member walk in, if you wanted to recognize
Oh.
them.
Right back there. This is Jeannie Grandstaff. I think you joined about a year ago to the board, and she actually has a background in her background in environmental. I think wastewater. Is that right? Yeah. For Hopewell, I think, if I remember correctly. So she brings a lot of knowledge and perspective to our board too.
Main comment is just thank you. Really appreciate it. Everybody has incredible expertise. And I hope that the LED project happens in the next year. So, and you might want to point the bus efficiency piece, because I thought that was fascinating. Mm-hmm. Just when you calculate the number of miles and the savings as a result, I don't remember, but I think the plus buses constantly on the side of the road because they're so old. But what right. the miles per gallon? Do you remember what the? It
doubled. I think it went from an average of 5 to an average of 10 for new fleet.
And I thought that I was shocked that thinking it was
10 still doesn't sound like very much,
yeah,
right?
But 5 to 10 that's huge. Yeah, and then how many, tens of thousands, I bet Josh Davis knows, but it'd be substantial savings.
There are interesting things to talk about there too with alternative fuels, propane, natural gas, even electrification. Just a few years ago, electrification was such a pie in the sky, impossible, out of reach type of thing. It wasn't worth really looking into. But my company actually has done a handful of electrifications of municipality fleet bus fleets in the Pacific Northwest with great success. So it's still a tall order and something that we would have to consider, but it probably is a component of our future at some point, and worth at least starting to think about. So we'll be happy to provide information on that as well.
Future goal.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you for the thoroughness of your report as well. Appreciate that. Next, we have an update from the Chesterfield Education Foundation. Ms. Coleman.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for your time and for your support of the foundation. It's not lost on our team how many people in this room, in front of me and behind me, collaborate with us every year in some way or another. Ryan has been represented on our board, and so we're very, very grateful. I'm not going to take a lot of time to go into all of our programs, rather just give you some financial updates, which I think are the most dynamic. Right now, or last year, we had 3 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. Our income was $672,000. And this is how we distributed those funds, some of those funds, for the good of the division. Mirror Me, the Diversity Initiative, scholarships to students, innovation grants to teachers, various collaborations. You know, there's all kinds of things that come up that aren't steady programmatic opportunities, but we're there with some funding to distribute. And then recognition includes Bravo, Teacher of the Year, Hall of Fame. So, you know, we put out significant amount of funding for these things. And then this year, we've got 3 full-time employees and 26 part-time employees because we've taken on 21st century learning centers funded by the state of Virginia. So we've got 4 sites: Providence, Chalkley, Bensley, and Falling Creek. And that's an infusion of about $900,000 to the foundation. We feel like we're providing a really necessary opportunity for students to learn after school where they might not have that, and their parents are receiving some really high-quality supervision for their children after school while they work. So that's a really powerful opportunity for the kids. And CCPS is providing some help with us on the payment of employees. We're pass-through for that, so we're very grateful for that. And then our grants to date have been very, very successful. We've actually raised $220,000 for CECLA this year. I was just over at CECLA with Leslie today talking about how that money was going to be distributed, and that came from 3 different foundations, with 150 coming from Robbins singularly. Mirror Me, already $30,000 for the year. Recovery Academy, $20,000. Innovation grants, $12,500, and CTE, $150. Most of that came from a business partner, I think, that folded. We've got $200,000 in grants pending. So we're chasing the money and really just trying to fund all the dynamic things that the division is up to. Looking ahead, so right now, I'm the interim ED. They are in the process of interviewing candidates for the permanent role, and they hope to make that hire by Christmas. The first half of the year will be spent really strategic planning. It's time for us to have a new strategic plan. So we anticipate that we would be interviewing and having some focus groups with folks in this room to help us think about what should the foundation be focused on, what should we be funding, is the program delivery space where we need to be? Those are really critical questions. And then big ideas, more dollars, more donors. You know, I come from a background of just really engaging with high net worth people and funding big ideas. And Merv and I have talked about some of these opportunities. We're meeting next week with someone from the Red Gates Foundation to potentially fund another early learning center. So these are, you know, this is the direction that I think that we're headed, and just really trying to be aggressive and think big. That's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Coleman.
Sure.
Board members, any discussion? Mr. Harder?
Well, I just want to say, thank you for the presentation, and it's been my honor for the last 4 years to be able to work with the CEF and really see the good things that they've done in our schools and, what they're going to continue to do. So I do know of all the hard work that goes in from everyone that is in the foundation, and just truly appreciate everything that you guys do bring to the school division. So thank you.
Sure, you're quite welcome.
Yes, ditto. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I know the school system and our teachers and our principals are very, very appreciative.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have an update on the Recovery Academy from Dr. Merriman and Mr. Savoy.
Hello, everyone. I'm here again for our annual update. As you know, we always like to start our presentations about our journey. Legislation was signed back in June of 2022. Ribbon cutting was August of 2022, and our first day of school last year, September the 8th, 2022. So I'm happy to announce we've been in business for 1 year, and we are excited at the growth that we're going. Current enrollment now is 15. We did accept a new student. They'll start on Monday, so now it's 15. 13 from Chesterfield, 2 from Henrico. Currently, we do have 5 to 8 students who are on standby, meaning we're just waiting for additional documentation from the outside counties. So we do have some students that are outside for Hanover, City of Richmond finally, and Petersburg. So by the end of January, we're looking at about 19 to 20 students by the end of January. We are currently fully staffed, academic and clinical. We have 2 teachers, 1 IA. We have a full clinical staff with 3 clinicians and a peer recovery specialist. And as always, we have Letty. We still have our partnership with CSB Mental Health. They do provide the clinical supervision for our clinical team and their support for our groups. We have new partnerships this year. The first is with BC Rams and Recovery. They will provide a weekly group for our students, which is a great thing because these are bachelor's and master's level students in social work who are also on their own journey to recovery as well. Second partnership is also with Recovery Corps. They provide our peer navigator, Miss Nadia. They pay her full-time to be on our staff, full-time as well. So they have a full-time peer support specialist on staff. She supports our clinical team, but she also supports our students outside the school, where she can attend outside meetings with them and provide families with additional resources that we cannot. Our achievements, as you know, in August, we received the Best County Achievement Award for VACO. And then in September, we were at the White House for the first ever Recovery Month Summit. Again, we were the only school in the whole country that allowed to have students on the panel to discuss their journeys in recovery, which was an amazing accomplishment for our first year. Those are pictures. I think those pictures look better than the other ones. Completed events, we had the Opioid Abatement Authority. We provided a webinar for them, myself and our senior clinician, Ms. Melissa Mariner. We discussed how it is to open a recovery school, maintain one, operations, foundation, funding, and lessons learned. Also provided a link for those who would like to go see the webinar. We also had the commissioner from the Virginia Department of Behavioral Health. He and his team toured our site and also met with our students to discuss their journey to recovery. Also on December 5th, we had our education committee members, our state representatives and state senators. They also did a tour of our facility led by our student, Mr. Michael Spain, and they also discussed their journey to recovery as well. Upcoming event this Friday, we have our safety event. As you know, we're about to go on our winter break, which is 2 weeks outside their normal routine with us. So we've helped them provide a safety plan for them, Narcan training, things like that, to make sure they're safe over the winter break. At the end of the year, on May 16th, we have our completion ceremony. We'll recognize our graduating seniors and also those who are completing their year in the program. Tomorrow, we'll be doing another webinar with this symposium. It's basically the same thing like the Opioid Abatement Authority. We're discussing how it is to open and operate a recovery school, a lesson learned as well for those who want to mimic it in the state. Future goals, maintaining upwards of 25, which I do believe we will definitely hit that goal. My staff and I discussed this before I left. We do think we probably exceed this goal this year. So we're super excited for all the amount of referrals. I will say that we are booked for referrals for intakes until we leave for Christmas break and for those actually coming back the first week as well. So we're definitely excited for expansion and also with representation from our districts as well. And then for recognition, working on accreditation process. I do believe by the end of the spring, we'll have all our documentation in place to go towards accreditation. That's it. Any questions?
Yep, thank you very much. Board members, any discussion? Ms. Heffron?
Thank you. Thanks so much for your presentation, and thanks for everything that you do for our kids every day. The Recovery Academy students, of the 15 students that we have, are any of them returning students in their second year?
We have about 4 returning students during their second year. 3 of the 4 are seniors.
Oh, great. Right. So their last year.
Yes.
As the parent of a senior, hopefully their
Right.
last year. We can do that.
Hopefully their last year. We're going to make sure that they graduate. That's one of our goals. We do have only 4 because last year we did graduate a couple of seniors, and then we had a few who, working with their parents, they decided to transition back to the homeschool. They felt safe enough that they were able to transition back to their schools.
That's wonderful. Thanks for, it's a testament to the tools that they're able to get through the program. And you mentioned the accreditation. What are some of the benefits of accreditation other than, I guess, just having that?
Well, some of the benefits is that the recognition that you actually fall within the same accrediting board as other recovery schools in the state, in the country. You will have the support of a network of recovery schools, so additional resources, training, things of that nature.
Outstanding. Wonderful. Well, thanks again for all you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have an ESL update from Dr. Ortiz and Ms. Jenkins.
All right. Good afternoon, distinguished board and Superintendent Doherty. I serve as the Director of the Office of Student Support Services and Equity, of which ESL is one of the areas in the support services ecosystem. I have Tara Jenkins with me, and as the coordinator, she leads most of the programming and ensures we are in compliance with federal and state components, while also serving as a lead advocate and champion for children and resources. To provide some context before we go into our updates, English language programs are essential to a division as diverse as Chesterfield County. Our ESL programs focus on helping our students to develop proficiency for both communication and academic success. Research reveals the value in being bilingual or multilingual in such a globalized world. We are proud of our work in CCPS to provide every student with the support they need to be successful. Additionally, it was brought to my attention that this board, with this superintendent, just a few years ago, voted for inclusion at every school, which removed the catchment centers for ESL students. That move allowed students to remain at their home schools and not be transported all over town to receive the services that they need to be successful. So thank you all for your foresight and leadership. And so as we jump right into the updates, you'll see that our programming remains aligned to the Imagine Tomorrow. We'll provide you with some updates related to enrollment, some of our programmatic guidance, our EL instruction through LEAP, which is Language Instruction Education Programs, and then some of our use of the Title III funds. So as you see, our diversity in Chesterfield, when our students and families come to us, you'll see they've identified 112 birth countries and 101 languages spoken in our division, with the top 5 languages noted here as Spanish, Arabic, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Cambodian. Our enrollment, we wanted to make sure that you had data for the last 2 years, but thought it was insightful to provide some additional data prior to COVID. So you'll see those are the 3 data points that we used. So if you see the continuous trend for enrollment for our level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you'll see that there are some areas between level 3 and 4 where we have been intentional and digging a little deeper to provide some additional support in those areas, which Ms. Jenkins will highlight.
Exactly. So as we look at our level 3s and our level 4s, while we know that that is an enrollment and it's the population size, we are also making sure that our students are progressing towards language proficiency. And so we have intentional instructional practices, and we're looking at that to see how we can best support our students to meet that exit criteria for the program, moving from level 3 to 4, and then level 5 and 6, which is beyond. They've already exited out of the program. One of the main ways in which we are supporting the schools in meeting those goals is to ensure that we have appropriate staffing for ESL. As you know, the state SOQ for ESL staffing, it's still at 20 to 1,000, which is about 1 to 50 students. But Chesterfield County does a wonderful job in effective staffing to ensure that we have effective instructional practices. And so we provide a level 1 to 2 For level 1 to 2 students, a 1 to 25 ratio. And for level 3 and 4 students, they have a 1 to 40 ratio. Again, having that differentiated staffing model ensures that our teachers are able to meet the unique needs of our diverse population, from our newest speakers of English, all the way to those who are meeting and exceeding that exit criteria for English language proficiency. Our central office staffing supports our schools and our teachers through multiple avenues, including professional development, looking at job-embedded coaching, and again, that family engagement support. For our Welcome Center staff, procedural compliance begins with them, because that is recognizing and identifying our potential English learners to see who will be an English learner and placing them in programs in a manner that is efficient for our students to succeed. So we focus on enrollment procedures. Again, they are assessed within the first 30 days. That is a federal compliance, and we do a great job in doing that with the support of our schools. We also ensure parent notification, so our parents, through not only our Welcome Center, but our family engagement, understand the program and how we are supporting their students, but also figuring out what their specific needs may be. That exit criteria, which is a 4.4 based on our federal guidelines, is used through the English Language Proficiency Assessment WIDA access test. That is the only criteria that is allowed for our students to demonstrate their English proficiency. And then our schools do a great job in monitoring former Ls. So students who have exited out of the program, they are monitored for the first 2 years with full academic support, including accommodations. And then the schools monitor for additional 2 years as well, just again, to ensure that they are succeeding. Our ongoing focus really relies on, first, what the state has indicated as what is acceptable for a language instruction education program. So those are the LEAP models for our division. While there are 5 for the state, we focus on English as a second language, newcomer programs, and content with integrated ELD support, English language development support. That development is going to ensure that our ESL proficiency data and the curriculum are aligned. Again, if we're looking at what students need, not only just for language, but also in their content objectives as well. We are looking at our number of endorsed teachers, ESL teachers, and those who are dual endorsed, and then minutes of service and performance monitoring. Indicators of success include our students' goals being met. Our L committees within our schools are meeting more regularly to assist with establishing student goals. And then transcript evaluation, all of those things kind of meet that overarching goal of on-time graduation. And yes, that is the same for our English learners. And that's where Title III federal funds really come into place. They are supplemental by nature, and they have 2 streams of funding. The first fund is the larger pot of money, so to speak, and it's the limited English proficiency funding. Again, that is used supplementally, so we apply it to additional online resources, ESL family engagement, and instructional coaching. For our immigrant youth funding, those funds are specifically held or reserved for students who have been with us in US schools for less than 3 years, and they are identified as English learners. So that will look more like newcomer parent outreach, helping parents get adjusted to US schools, also providing mentoring, academic career in high school, and even support for our division personnel, reunification, or maybe even if there's any kind of trauma-informed care that is necessary. Our federal funds also support achievement through professional development. That is a huge component of Title III funds for our division, looking at job-embedded coaching and professional learning for all stakeholders, including administrators, special education staff, school counselors, even our registrars, so from the front of the office to the classroom. Programmatic alignment includes praxis prep to increase our teacher capacity with ESL endorsements, Leadership Academy, and for our teaching staff, SIOP, which is a Sheltered Instruction Observation Protocol, is our leading research-based job-embedded coaching that we provide. And then family engagement is that third prong for Title III. We have 2 family engagement specialists within the office that are funded through these grant funds, and they really focus on the parent piece, everything from summer adult ESL to literacy programs and helping them not only strive to become bilingual themselves, but how to help their students meet that literacy goal. We are also partnering more heavily with a focus on CTE. We would like to see our English learner population grow in those programs as well. So we've really strengthened those lines of communication with CTE and looking to see how we can build awareness within our English learner community. So as we like to say in our world, every English learner, always and in all ways. And again, I echo Dr. Ortiz's comments. Our superintendent and you as the board, you have really thrusted our division into what is our very bright future. And so I thank you.
Thank you both for the presentation. Board members, is there any discussion?
Can we go back to the slide where it shows the growth in L's? I just think people need to focus on that, and especially, yeah, it was the one that, oh, sorry, I meant the other one. Yeah, just the numbers. 2020, 915, and 2023, 2181. This more than doubled. And just as we're looking, this is to the next board, obviously, the bilingual specialists who are brought on with federal funding, with that kind of growth, the only way we continue progress is having more bilingual staff on the ground. So I'm hoping the next board keeps them, and it might obviously they need to see this presentation. I'll think of all the things of because I didn't know that until I saw this slide, right? So that's tremendous, and we need the proper supports in place so that they are productive citizens that are going places in their new home.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have an update on ESSER and year-end funds. Mr. Meister.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, other members of the board, and Dr. Doherty. I do appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you today about 2 topics. The first of which I'll talk about, which is our FY23 financial results, and the second, which will be an ESSER update for you all. So I will turn to FY23 to start. I want to keep in mind that this is for the fiscal results from last fiscal year that ended on June 30th of 2023. It does take a little while for the audit process to go through and confirm the results, and then we need to work through counting on timing. So we are here today in December to report results from last school year, 2023. With that in mind, the 2023 results were in line or comparable to previous years. We saw about $19 million in savings, largely driven by, no surprise here, staff vacancies was the primary driver of lower expenses. We did see some lower revenue as well to offset that a bit, but we still wound up in around the same 19 million of savings as a result. What we've done with that is we've taken a systematic approach to looking at that 19 million and really making sure we invest that in the places of highest priority across the district. And I will definitely walk through that in the next several pages. So as we look at 2023 fiscal year results, you can see about 22 million of the favorability resulted from the expense side, the bottom piece of the puzzle. The bulk of that was from instruction. That shouldn't be a surprise. That's where the bulk of our expenses are. You see a little bit, about 2.5 to 3 million of reduction, largely on the state side from revenue. That slightly offset that, which left us in the spot where we were, give or take 2.5% favorable over the course of the year. Diving into that just one step deeper for the board's consideration, you can see instruction. I mentioned that's where the bulk of the savings came from. You can see about 17 million of savings from instruction. That's only about 2.5%, 2.8% there off of the roughly $600 million we do allocate to instruction over the course of the year. The highest percentage, though, you can see there is a 4.5% favorability in the administrative group. Transportation was the last one I'll comment on specifically. You see that one came in about on track, right around the 52 million. Yes, we did have bus driver vacancies, which drove savings, but if you remember last year, fuel prices were high. That largely ate into most of those savings on the operation or the personnel side. So what do we do with that 19 million? As I mentioned, we went through a pretty structured review to look at this. First and foremost, we had to look at the requirements relative to the ongoing budget process. That first million is a recurring investment that the county requires us to put forward out of our year-end funds. So that first million is largely accounted for. That's been the case for the last 20 or 30 years. So we'll continue to look at that 1 million. The next 10 million you see on the list, that's a big number. That's where the bulk of this funds is being allocated. We're going to set that aside to support our FY25 budget. I know I've come to you over the course of several budget processes and talked about a line item in the budget for revenue that I've called one-time funds, either from our own savings or some county money. We need to refill that pot in order for us not to have a big reduction in ongoing county revenue next year. This 10 million will help refill that pot and lessen the step down from that one-time funds that has been provided in the past. I know that's a important piece of Ms. Coker, your plans as we go forward to lead off of that investment. This is a step towards that. The rest of the items get into more of those needs of the district. Just under 2 million, 1.85 million pointed towards maintenance. If you recall in the previous budgets, that's a place where we've made some adjustments to the budget. This is an effort to refill that pot to allow our maintenance in our buildings to continue, vehicles that we need to buy, et cetera. That tends to be one of the items that we do pick out when we have a budget uncertainty. So we're going to add that back here to make sure Josh, John, and team have the funds they need. 1.3 million or thereabouts related to CIP reserve. We've got a pretty aggressive CIP program. We want to make sure every random cent we pick up, we can put into that to make sure that we have monies to cover various programs that we have coming up. About 3.8 related to our mega trailer initiative. This is a funds largely pointed towards getting out of the single trailer business and putting in megas wherever feasible. So about 3.8 towards that initiative. $1 million towards security, ballistic film on schools, cameras, enhancements across the district and other needs in the security area for about $1 million. And lastly, $150,000 for transportation. Most of that pointed towards what I'll call star seats for our pre-K for our youngest kids to ease the transition from that pre-K child on the bus to a elementary or middle school kid to be able to make that transition for the bus drivers that much easier. These would be fold up star seats to really help that transition. You put that all together, that adds up to about $19 million. What you'll see on the memo this evening is a request to appropriate this funds. It won't add up to the 19 million in terms of actual appropriation because that first 11 million, the future reserves and beginning balance, we'll go ahead and appropriate that and manage that within the traditional budget process. The CIP will be one item, and then the remaining 6.8, 6.9 million will be what you'll look to appropriate in this evening's memo. I do have another topic on ESSER, but I will pause here for comments or questions from the board on your end.
Board members, any comments or questions?
I'm just glad that we can get some of those items that we had to put aside back in. So thanks for your number crunching.
Awesome. So moving on to our ESSER update. We'll start with a reminder. These funds have been provided to us over the course of obviously the pandemic timing really spent to ensure safe buildings, instruction across all different levels, and differentiated support where needed. We've really worked towards funding these various initiatives and spending the funds within the required timelines, and we are well on our path to liquidating the final leg of this. ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 at this point are fully liquidated. ESSER 3 is what we're largely going to talk about as we go forward today. As one other reminder, you've seen this slide before. We'll spend most of our time talking about the first item in each of those columns, ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. But a reminder to the board, we have seen several other pots of one-time pandemic relief funding. You can see those listed here. Some of the larger ones include things like CARES funding, if you remember back in 2020, when that was the first move into some of this pandemic relief funds. What our friend Scott Carson likes to call CSLFRF. CSLFRF really pointed towards the HVAC work are two of the larger ones. You can see the other investments here, but I won't dwell on that for the sake of this discussion because I do want to switch over to looking at ESSER specifically. Two really important numbers on this page. ESSER 1 obviously has already been funded. ESSER 2, just under 23 million. That performance period ended September 30th, 2023. So that is now in our rearview mirror. We'll close that out as part of this discussion and a vote tonight. And ESSER 3, that's the last piece of this, and the key date there is September 30th, 2024. So we're in our last school year with this. We'll have one more summer where we'll be able to tap ESSER 3 funds, but then we'll need to make sure that we are moving on to life post ESSER. So what have we done so far? You can see this sheet, ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, as I said a few times, are fully spent. ESSER 3, we're about 55% of the way through this as of October 31st. We've had some significant spend, obviously, since then, so we're even further along as we sit here today in mid-December. About 56.9 million spent amongst that 80 million. 22.9 million is what we've committed to, and as you can see here, we're not in a point where we're looking for the board's recommendation on reallocating those funds at this point. The monies have been committed mostly to either ongoing projects, staff and buildings, or things like bonuses that we've promised, and I'll walk through that as we go. I mentioned ESSER 2. This is our closeout review of this. This is where these monies have been spent, just under 23 million here. Mostly instruction. You see about 8.9 in instruction in the middle, but things like technology, special education, summer school, all are largely instruction areas as well. You will also notice a rather large 5.7 million related to facilities and operations. If you remember, at the time of ESSER 2, a big piece of that story was ensuring the ability to return into the building safely. We invested a fair amount of those funds on building improvements, HVAC work, et cetera, to add up to the full 22.9, just under 23 million within ESSER 2. ESSER 3, what have we done so far? You can see we spent, again, about 28 million here. Once again, this one really high on the instruction bucket. You can see that both in the actual line item labeled instruction here of just over 55 million, but also things like technology, online learning, which is largely our virtual school and facilities related to that. Classroom technology is another big piece of this, with a relatively small amount, at least up to this point, on things like facilities, where we have spent some money on day porters and preventative maintenance. You'll see a little bit more when we flip the page in terms of what we're looking to close out on ESSER 3, but to date, the bulk of the spend has been on those various instruction activities. So when you look at where we're going to spend the remaining 23 million, as I mentioned, most of this is bodies and buildings, bonuses that we've promised, and some ongoing facilities work that we're just getting to the point of closing out. You can see 2.7 related to online learning still, close to 11 million left in instruction. The bulk of those funds, stipends, the annual subs that are in our buildings, various tutoring activities that continue across the district through ESSER, through some of the other pandemic relief funds, through All In. We continue to invest across a lot of different dimensions on tutoring and learning recovery. And lastly, I mentioned facilities and operations, where there are some building improvements that we're wrapping up that we will quickly liquidate on this as we go forward, largely in the HVAC space. Unfortunately, ESSER does come to an end soon, and I've been talking to this board about the ESSER cliff, if you will. We've talked about a $20 million bogey out there. We've listed on this page, and this is a page similar to what we showed in our last update, of various items that we've been funding through ESSER that we don't have a long-term funding source for. As we flip this page today, I'm happy to say that there are a handful of items that we have found a funding source for, at least in the near future, things like 3 engagement specialists, as we think about some of that flexible funding that the governor provided as part of the current year budget. Bus driver incentive, we're able to include that in our ongoing operational budget, as with instructional software and the facilities. That doesn't mean we're done. There's still a lot of items on this list to be really understood and looked at with respect to the FY25 budget. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time walking through each of these here, other than to say 2 things. One, they will be front and center in the FY25 budget. And quite frankly, the next presentation right after this will give you a little update from Dr. Fox and her work on the return on investment on many of these initiatives. And she'll be able to provide her perspective after looking at these, both on the implementation side, which I would routinely say has been very good, as well as the results from these, which again has also been very good. None of these we look at and say, this was not money well spent, this was all money well spent. It's going to be a question of, quite frankly, affordability and whether there are other trade-offs we can make as we go. So with that said, that slide largely talks to Dr. Fox's presentation that's coming up. So I'll end with the reminder that tonight you'll have 2 items on the board agenda. First off, the year-end memo, 17923, really to talk about the monies, the 19 million, and allocating that I led this presentation with, as well as a closeout memo on that ESSER 2 amount, really to align the final spend with the appropriation categories. And you'll see that in your consent item agenda. With that, I will pause for any questions for me, with the understanding that Dr. Fox follows me quickly with the return on investment discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meister. Board members, any discussion on ESSER? No. I did have one clarification question. For the ESSER cliff, you say it's approximately $20 million. You had 2.5 that has been removed, so does that drop it to 18.5 or?
Thereabouts, yes.
Okay, oh, sorry, 17.5. Ooh,
Yeah,
math.
17, yeah.
Yeah, 17.5.
Yeah.
17.5.
We had been
yeah.
we had been talking about the 20 million. We've moved about that 2.5, as you said,
Okay,
off the cliff, if you will.
right. Just
Thank you for that
clarifying that.
clarification, absolutely.
Yes, thank you very much.
So to be clear for anyone listening, in order to remain status quo, we would need 17.5 million
Thereabouts. Yeah.
in addition added onto our current budget.
All else
And that's
equal.
no more raises, that's nothing else. That's nothing in addition other than to keep the status quo of the services we are currently providing, with a list of all those things on your screen there, 17.5 million to continue operating as is.
As is. Yeah.
So I like to clarify things.
No, that is the right interpretation, absolutely. And that's part of the FY25 budget process that we'll look at closely. And I know Dr. Doherty will come through with a proposal on how to get us over the cliff. We'll see how the funding lands. We'll hear from the governor on December 20th, and we'll go from there. No. We'll work closely, obviously.
I have a question. Thinking with my school health advisory board committee hat on, and the just unanimous concern about mental health shared by other committees, the psych social work positions, couldn't they, because of the governor's all-in initiative and the focus on absenteeism and the connection that continues to be reinforced even at the state level, that mental health is directly connected to the absenteeism problems. I'm wondering if it's possible to use that funding for the psych social work positions, because they are connected to mental health, which helps with the absenteeism.
I will say it hasn't been part of our submission to date with the DOE. We would have to go back and verify with DOE whether that would be acceptable. I do recognize your connection with mental health, and absenteeism is hard to ignore.
And we did have, it was the first time Dr. Doherty was there, but the Hunt Institute Virginia Education Summit, which was well staffed by the governor's office and had bipartisan legislators, and you heard a lot of, even someone said, the pandemic was trauma, and absenteeism is a casualty of the trauma. So I think we'd get support.
Ms. Haynes, I think that's a great point. I'm always leery about what's being said at different meetings when I'm around government officials, because I really want to see it signed in the law for the budget. There's the money that was funded to us, there's not a great deal of funding in that chronic absenteeism. Most of it was placed into the instruction for the tutors. So I know that one of the things in a meeting today with superintendents was looking at the issue of mental health and getting ideas on funding that's there. I know that many legislators have said they want to support education and the needs. Mental health is a need. We've started addressing the issues of tutoring and instruction. I think we are leading the way in the state in that area right now. We are definitely ahead of majority of the people and where they are. We're seeing great results. But the opportunity to look at, not only do we get the funding, but we need to find the people. Another idea that's out there is how do we look at our counseling opportunity and lower our counseling ratios? That is a big discussion right now with many educators and legislators. The mental health issue with some additional training could help us with the counselor issue. So there's a lot on the table that's coming. Like anything else, every category that we look at, there are not people to pull from. So we really have to think outside the box with the funding. I hope that we can get the governor and the General Assembly to push for additional support for trauma and for help in our schools, giving us, I think, we've already, and you guys have done a great job in our budget of helping us lower our ratio of counselors, when you think about over 230 plus counselors. But the opportunities, that's something that when you talk to, especially in elementary, you could use 5 counselors in elementary school and they could all be busy all day, every second, and in the evening. So I think that ratio, I'm hoping, is going to come down. That's a step. I don't think the mental health issue, as we heard, is going to be resolved tomorrow. But I think we have to start taking steps to start helping our students see some additional help. And as our students always say, they appreciate being in the school to talk to people. So having these people in there who are counselors is one way of looking at that as well. Not saying that the mental health people aren't needed. They're just, as you talk to the professionals and even talk to our county our county partners and state partners, they're having a very difficult time. So I think there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of outside the box thinking, and we're just hoping the state comes up and says, here's the money, you know your county, you know your students, use it to help with mental health, trauma, and which will help us with chronic absenteeism. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Meister.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation on ESSER return on investment from Dr. Fox.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Dr. Daugherty, and members of the board. It is my pleasure to speak with you today about the work done to evaluate the return on investment of the ESSER funded initiatives. Very briefly today, we will look at where we have been, where we started, where we are, and what is next. As a reminder, the goals of the return on investment work were to determine the impact of the recurring ESSER expenses to support budget decisions in the upcoming fiscal year 25 discussion. This work began in the spring of 22 with the development of an evaluation framework, the formation of teams who collaborated to plan and conduct evaluations focused on implementation and impact. On this slide, we see the same expenses shared previously by Mr. Meister. I'm going to start with the list on the right here. These are the initiatives which, for various reasons, either were not evaluated or for which there were no key findings. An example would be the MERV filters and the day porters. The decision there was to say that there's not a whole lot my team can bring to the table there. We really need to look at what the industry standards are. Of note here, especially Dr. D, given your recent comments about staff, The reason that the psychologists and social workers are on here is because we were unable to hire those until this year, so there was no data that we could collect to look at the effectiveness there. On the left, you can see the 10 initiatives for which evaluations were completed. These reports have been shared with the superintendent and with division leaders for review and incorporation into the new budget. Before I get into the findings of these, I want to just mention some cautions. First and foremost, I feel like our ideal outcome would be a rank order of the initiatives and say, this is the best bang for your buck. And that's just not possible. An example here very specifically would be the annual substitutes and the HR substitute specialist. Both of those positions, or all of those positions, worked very hard to ensure that we had a safe and supportive learning environment, but you can't really tease out the impact or compare the impact of one to the other. Additionally, for my team, a robust evaluation for any program would examine data across multiple years. Given the cliff and the timeline, that just wasn't possible in here. And I know Dr. Meister also mentioned affordability as an important factor moving forward, but that was not something that our team could take into account. Even with those cautions, I would say there is a whole lot to be celebrated. This division put forth numerous innovative plans to address the needs. All of them were successfully implemented, they had positive outcomes, and they were well received by the stakeholders. On these next two slides, I am just going to highlight from each of the 10 that we evaluated one of the successes. I would note that this is not in any particular order. We start with the positions on this slide, and then we go into the bonuses and the other initiatives on the other. Noteworthy here, I'm not going to read this slide to you, but a dramatic decrease in math teacher vacancies, especially at some of our neediest schools. Having a qualified math teacher in those classrooms really supported those students. Also, I would highlight the 507 former dropouts who have re-engaged with former schooling, and congratulate the 139 of those who have earned their high school credential. In terms of, again, the bonuses and the other money, I would say that with regard to the bus driver bonus, I know that I was at a leadership meeting earlier this year where it was announced that we had 0 vacancies for bus drivers, which is definitely a celebratory moment, and I'm sure those bonuses contributed to that. And then finally, we know that only 35% of our households have school-age children in them. And the CCPS On the Go newsletter, which was distributed to every household in the county, citizens responded to include the included survey to say that they both knew more about and had more positive attitudes towards the school system. So in terms of moving forward, these reports have been shared with division leaders and the superintendent for consideration in the planning of the fiscal year 25 budget. And I thank you for your time and attention this afternoon.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. Board members, any discussion or comments? Mr. Harder?
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Fox, and your team for putting this together. I think, when a lot of this ESSER money was dropped into our laps and we had some vague guidelines on what to use it for, we had to make decisions on what we thought was truly going to make a positive impact. And, as you said, some things we really can't quantify what the effects were because there's just not enough data. But the list that you just shared there, those are things that we know actually had a positive impact. And I believe when we came to this board, there was over 100 bus driver vacancies. I know just last year there was almost close.
170 at one time.
At one point there was 170. So, we were able to utilize this money for a number of different initiatives that have really given us a positive product and outcome on it. So, just kudos to everybody in the division for really finding the best avenues and the best bang for our buck and what we could do with it. And I look, you guys have a little bit of a challenge, I think, ahead of you as we start to look at, some of the different programs and folding them in. But, I'm proud of the work that everyone's done up to this point. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So Dr. Fox, wait a minute.
Sorry, I thought we were done.
You're running away.
So sorry, Mrs. Bailey.
That's okay. First of all, thanks for this. I would love your job. I think it would be fun to figure out like what was valuable or not. I would never want to do this with my own budget, but my personal, a lot would probably hit the curb. What I want to say, though, is the JLARC study that came out the other day that we all sat in the briefing with and everything, I think all of these funds that we received as a result of COVID actually were able to address unfunded needs that we'd had already. And so the reason why these programs are all successful and are positive impacts on our schools because they were needed. We didn't go out and create things to spend this money on. These were needs that this money allowed us to address that were unfunded by the state for decades, at least since 2008 when the recession started. So I think that the ability to keep them in here in the budget is the next board's challenge, but they're definitely necessary. And I think that's why you couldn't find anything in that list that said this wasn't successful or this didn't have an impact, because we really just funded things that were necessary even pre-COVID. Thanks for your work.
You're welcome.
Ms. Haynes?
I just wanted to say I read a lot, and so many boards use ESSER money to balance budgets without being, very thoughtful and, constantly pointing out that, they hadn't been in the budget because we hadn't been funded, right? So I'm really proud of our commitment to, to being laser focused on the true needs and also, kind of saying the hard thing, which is that they have to go if we don't get the money. And apparently a lot of other boards didn't do that and are now faced with people who expected these things. So I applaud our fiscal responsibility and the heavy load that you, heavy lift that your staff did to keep us on track. So.
Thank you.
And I also hope that the General Assembly funds them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fox, and to your team for this very difficult project. Data analyzing is fun, but it's challenging when you can't have like a definitive, this is the way to go. So I definitely appreciate all the hard work that you've done. Question from an industry standard, though. You said multiple years of data. What is that number of years?
I think it would depend. Like one example would be the high needs bonuses. We put those in. I think we're in our second year of those, and to really understand what the impact is of those, we would have wanted 2 years of data, 3 years of data, 4 years of data to really sort of look at that. Sure. A lot of times when we talk about a program implementation, we're talking about really 3 years for it to be really well implemented to get the outcome. So that's what we would sort of be, our ideal world would be.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And would that be 3 years of implementation in similar circumstances, not year one pre-COVID, year two COVID? Right.
I mean, I think with any implementation, you're going to make modifications. That's part of why you do an implementation study the first year, is to figure out what's working and how can we make it better. And then, you get to the short-term outcomes and then the long-term outcomes. We would want to be able to look at all of those and how they change over time.
Thank you very much. Now you can go. Next, we have announcements, communications, and school board comments. School board members, are there any announcements or comments?
This was my last work session ever.
That is true. No. The next school board business meeting will be held this evening, December 12th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. If there's no further public business, we will enter into closed session, which will be held in this conference room, the PMR conference room. Madam Clerk, please announce the items for today's closed session.
It is my understanding that the school board desires to enter into a closed session in accordance with Section 2.2-3711.a of the Code of Virginia, the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and specifically under subsection 1, the discussion and consideration of personnel disciplinary matters. 2, the discussion consideration, actually it's 8, consultation and legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice. Just to confirm, we don't have any student matters this evening.
Thank you. Members of the board, you have just heard the items requested to be discussed in closed session. Do I have a motion in that regard?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call roll on the motion.
Dot Heffron,
Aye.
Debbie Bailey,
Aye.
Ryan Harder,
Aye.
Catherine Haynes,
Aye.
Ann Coker.
Aye. We are now in closed session.